Today I've prepared a slideshow about different voting systems, their benefits, drawbacks, and why all of it is important. Hope you enjoy. Hi everyone. Today we're going to take a look at a handful of different voting systems, some of which are more effective than others. The goal is for you to get a basic understanding of the different voting systems shown, and to be able to point out the benefits and drawbacks of each. In the 2020 election, Massachusetts had a ballot question that, if approved, would implement ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting, in state elections as early as 2022. It did not pass, but we'll see what the pros and cons were. The first system we'll talk about is plurality voting, also known as first past the post. In this system, each voter selects their favorite candidate, and the candidate with the most votes is the winner. Let's look at a sample election. Red wins with 12 votes to blue's 8 votes. So far, so good. But let's say that in the next election, some of the red voters break off from the main party and form a pink party. This time, blue wins. And this is actually a disaster, because by splitting the votes of the red majority, the pink party has given the victory to the blue party, even though the pink voters would rather see red win over blue. This is called the spoiler effect, where introducing a third party swings the election in this way. It's called the spoiler effect because the pink voters in future elections will likely be forced to vote for red, their second favorite, since it would be too risky to vote pink, which won't win, and possibly jeopardize the red party's win. This system causes a trend towards a two-party system where voters and campaigns only focus on the two largest parties. This is the largest drawback of plurality voting, so let's look at some alternatives. Instant runoff voting. Also known as ranked choice voting, voters rank their preferences of candidates in order from 1 to the number of candidates, and can stop if they don't have any more preferences. The candidate who receives the fewest first choice votes is eliminated, and the votes from the people who ranked that candidate as their first choice are given to the candidates who are ranked as the second choice. This essentially simulates the election as if that candidate hadn't run. So let's look at the scenario where pink spoiled the election previously. As you can see, pink is eliminated first, since it got the fewest votes, but pink voters listed red as their second choice, so their votes are given to red, who then wins. This is the same result as if pink hadn't run, but pink voters can now list pink as their number one choice without risking blue winning the election. However, there are still flaws in the system. In this election, pink voters have done surprisingly well, so well that red is eliminated first. However, red voters don't really care about pink, and most vote for blue as their second choice, giving blue the victory after the redistribution of votes. This is a disaster for pink, since they would prefer that red win. So, ranked choice voting addresses the main issue of plurality voting, the spoiler effect, but is susceptible to its own flaws. Scored voting. In this system, voters rank the candidates, and each ranking is associated with a point value, and the candidate who receives the most points wins. It's nice in that it factors in more than just a first choice. Let's look at some samples. In this election, first is worth 2 points, second is worth 1 point, and third is worth 0 points. Green wins this first election. Not bad. With just a tweak of the point values, the election can be swayed. Suppose we alter the values to be 5 points for first, and keep 1 point for second and 0 points for third. The election goes from green to red with no change in the ballots. However, as long as the point values are agreed upon before the ballots are cast, it's not a huge issue. Now let's see what happens when blue, the weakest candidate, drops out. With just 2 candidates, the voters vote in the order that their ballots had red and green, and simply ignore blue. Red wins this election, even though green would have won the election if blue were still in it. This is the greatest flaw with scored voting. A candidate dropping out can affect the winner. Let's look at another possible issue. In this election, first place is worth 3 points, second place is worth 2, and third is worth nothing. Red and green both know blue is the weakest, and put blue as their second choice, so that the second place points don't go to their biggest opponent. However, due to the scoring system and strategic voting, blue, the least favorite candidate, wins. This is clearly no good, and another major flaw with scored voting, similar to the spoiler effect. So in summary, the scoring values are arbitrary, candidates dropping out can affect the result, and it can also elect the worst candidate. Condorcet voting. Instead of all these chains of comparisons, you might be thinking, what if we just compared all the candidates 2 at a time, and whichever candidate beats every other candidate would win? This is Condorcet voting. It sounds good on paper. Using the ballots from our sample election, each voter decides the winner of the pairwise comparisons based on which candidate they ranked higher in their ballot. Red wins this first election because red beats blue, green beats blue, and red beats green. Red beat all of its competitors, so red wins. Now, what if the election looked like this? As you can see, green beats red, red beats blue, and blue beats green. That's a problem. No candidate beat both of the other two, and there's a loop here reminiscent of rock, paper, scissors. No winner can be decided, and Condorcet voting fails here. That's the biggest problem with Condorcet voting. The final system we will look at here is approval voting. Each voter approves or disapproves of every candidate, and the candidate with the most approval wins. In theory, this should prevent a disliked candidate from winning. So, where each line represents the candidates that the voters approved of, green has 13 votes and wins. Most people are okay with green. However, we can take a look at what would happen if only the first choice were considered. This time, red would win. And red would have won with 10 votes, since green was a second choice for all voters. However, it can be debated whether red should win with 10 first choice votes or green with 13 second choice votes. Now let's talk about Arrow's impossibility theorem. It states that no method in an election with 3 or more candidates and 2 or more voters can convert ranked votes into a complete and transitive winner while also following these 3 rules. The 3 rules are that if every voter prefers X over Y, then the group prefers X over Y. If every voter's preference between X and Y remains unchanged, then the group's preference between X and Y should also remain unchanged, even if voters' preferences between other pairs change. Finally, there cannot be a dictator. No single voter can have the power to always determine the group's preference. So none of the systems that we talked about today can be perfect as a result. Now, why does this matter? Most elections in the US use a plurality system, and a plurality system is clearly not the best system. Under this system, elections can favor candidates with extreme policies, which can marginalize groups such as immigrants or minorities. Consensus candidates cannot win, and a two-party system emerges. Now, some final words. Some voting systems are therefore better than others, and it's still important to realize that the ability to vote is at the heart of democracy, and therefore a flawed voting system is a flawed democracy. Thank you.